No mirrors, no treadmills, and no egos. So there's no opportunity to spend hours flexing in front of the mirror, which I've seen myself after a HIIT workout. No mirrors are probably great for customer retention. I'm usually a sweaty mess of a man.
Hello and welcome to The Big Con, the podcast where we use the benefit of hindsight and a healthy dose of schadenfreude to look at where businesses took a misstep that had an impact on either their profit, their brand, or something much more dire. Hi, I'm Emily, Harvard degree candidate.
And I'm Dale, business nerd.
Strategy isn't just for the big players, so no matter what size business you work on, tune in as we learn through the failures of the poor souls that have gone before us.
Ooh, a little bit of a new intro there, Emily, because this is season 2. We've made it.
It is season 2. Welcome back, everyone. Did you have a nice break, Dale?
I did not seem long enough, but I was also itching to get back into the studio and get back into all the research, those businesses that maybe needed a little bit of guidance, a bit of help, and maybe could have invested in strategy. So
Absolutely.
glad to be back.
So Dale, you have a story for us today.
I do. Today we're looking at a business called F45.
Oh.
Now, F45, it's more than just 45-minute workouts that your fit friends won't stop posting about on Instagram. It's more than just a 1,700 plus strong franchise, somehow taking over the world, one kettlebell at a time. It's more than just a celebrity influencer hub attracting stars like Mark Wahlberg, David Beckham, Cindy Crawford, and Magic Johnson. And unfortunately, it's also more than just a stock that debuted at $17 on the New York Stock Exchange just 2 short years ago and now hovers around $1.
Uh-oh.
Not good. So today we're talking about F45. And it, to be honest, is quite a fascinating story. As of March 2023, it's still kind of unfolding, so it's quite recent. And it's got quite an ambitious plan for a bit of a turnaround because at one time it was an Australian success story. And to be honest, all this research that I've done, I can't help but actually root for them. And after diving deep into their franchisee space and a few spicy cordials, I kind of found myself considering a career change to become a franchise owner.
See, this is the thing. Like all I know about F45 is that it's an exercise thing and people are obsessed. Like it's kind of cultish in the way that it works.
And I'll get to that on the old cult vibes.
I think it's so funny that you've been sucked in just by the research.
I know. I'm indoctrinated. I've since reconsidered, but I'm still invested in the actual story. And so F45, if you're listening, we're offering some passionate, unsolicited advice or strategic guidance on your next steps. So this is a podcast for you and of course anyone else who is interested to listening. And welcome listeners, getting ahead of myself as I often do. So Em, what is F45? You said you're a bit in the dark. Well, there's 3 key players in this story that I'll try my best to weave together. We have the franchise owners, people who purchase an F45 franchise and run it. We have the F45 founders and the head office, that kind of environment. And we have the customers, those who ultimately get the end product. So let's start there. And to understand the mindset of an F45er, I went deep into the Instagram feed, the people who do these workouts, the customers. And to be honest, I can see the appeal of the end product. It's 45 minutes of high-intensity interval training and functional fitness, hence the F. So the F stands for functional and done in a team environment. So you run around to different stations, there's a TV on the wall that gives you guidance and a diagram to do some squats and all the other stuff. And there's trainers there to run the sessions and they offer support. And if they can, they offer modifications. It's a gym. And as someone who personally loves to throw steel around to work out like a hooligan, I tried to write this script without sounding like a complete wanker. I'll let the audience be the judge of that. But I can see why this business is a bit of a success. Have you ever taken part in a F45 style session, Em, like a HIIT workout?
Yes, but not very often in gym. I often do them at home, like through an app or something like that.
Me too. That's my exposure to HIIT. I love it. It's great. My shins and my feet hurt so much afterwards, but while you're doing it, it's great. And I think the one thing that I love about doing it, it's very confined. You do it in a 30-minute space and you're out and you're done and you're feeling great.
Yeah, I've done like 15-minute ones when I've been short on time and that's great.
That's what a lot of the customers really love about it. Before you say, it's just a gym, I think there's plenty of key differentiators. And the mantra of the F45 kind of approach is that there's no mirrors, no treadmills, and no egos. So there's no opportunity to spend hours flexing in front of the mirror, which I've seen myself after a HIIT workout. No mirrors are probably great for customer retention. I'm usually a sweaty mess of a man. They've got a bit of a technology angle, which is they've just got heart rate trackers and like they've got an app. So a bit of a technology angle. But I think the most significant differentiator, the instructors in this gym environment who are often the franchise owners, like to create a real family or community environment beyond the gym. So it's not just the workouts. They do things like trivia nights. They do social events. And on more than a few occasions, there's like big fitness trips away. So up to Queensland, maybe Bali, keep those kind of good F45 vibes going, which I like. Now, as we mentioned, it's an accidental favorite topic of this podcast, but cults. It's not often that they're used as a positive, but after researching F45, it's kind of hard not to see the overwhelming net benefit of, and I'm going to quote the founder here, Rob Dutch, who says it's cult-like. And a lot of the research articles you kind of search on F45 is like, oh, the F45 cult, or it's so happy to be part of this fitness cult. A lot of this comes from that kind of halo effect, which has given a lot of its marketing push. And as you mentioned, they pop up everywhere. Like there's plenty of F45s around. There's lots of them popping up. In fact, if I Google F45 right now, there's 5 franchises within 5 kilometers of me right now where I'm sitting. So I encourage anyone to jump on Google and do a similar test. There's a lot of places which there's F45s. Also, all the people doing it, they're talking about it. They're loving it. How do you know that someone does F45? Don't worry. They'll tell you. They're posting on their Insta. They're telling me they're doing it daily. And so I'm like, yeah, I'm assuming it must be good. This is great. There's even some common thought around this. So a bit of research to back it up, that hard and strenuous work bonds teams together, which helps that community vibe. So which I perhaps harshly call that kind of being in the trenches together, because nothing brings a team together faster than unity and success in overcoming a challenging task. So in this example, yay, cults.
Well, it's funny because they've given them like a sort of positive spin, like they've rebranded cult.
They've co-opted
in
the cult.
Like this sort of particular space.
Yes.
And I think the wellness space is so like we did with Young Living, when you start to look at the passion that people have for wellness in this day and age, it kind of makes sense to like lean on that for recruitment.
Yeah, 100%. Like I think there's things, as we said in the Young Living episode, we flash back to season 1, there's things we can learn from cults. Overwhelmingly, cults can have a lot of negative things about them. But again, different podcast, not this one. Let's talk business. So the idea comes from former equities trader Rob Dutch. I mentioned him before. And much like so many good businesses, it's challenging the status quo by solving a problem of an existing model. What if you could get more value from your gym membership? So in Paddington, Sydney, the first F45 is launched around 2012, 2013. Full credit to the fitness industry. They were doing subscription models long before it was cool. Mr. Dutch hits up his old rugby mate from school, Adam Gilchrist, who is not the cricketer, and any research article is very quick to go, Adam Gilchrist, not the cricketer. He has some experience in franchising, and together they spin up this kind of franchising opportunity for F45. So you can purchase an F45 from these guys. Cheeky little red herring here, but Gilchrist, although in some sources is praised for his franchising prowess and acumen, it's reported that he's actually coming off a bankruptcy stint in that similar period of time. Still, it's definitely something that he's putting behind him in this period of expansion and growth, and Dutch and Gilchrist are off selling their first franchise in 2013 and a further 15 franchises the year following. The lovely thing about this is many of these franchises were actually bought by members of the original Paddington gym. I think that's nice.
Yeah, I also didn't realize it had been around for that long.
I know.
Like, I feel it came into my sphere not very long ago.
I feel like it blew up and there was a saturation point.
Around
probably 2018, 2019, one of the growth period. I'll jump into that in a second. Now, the products. One of the benefits of the model for a franchisee is that the functional equipment is quite basic. So it's not technical, expensive things. It's things like mats, it's bands, it's kettlebells. You could technically go and buy a lot of these things at a Rebel Sport or a standard fitness store, which is kind of different to some of the more complex and expensive equipments you may find in other standard gyms. The F45 office, they send out the franchise's brand new workouts weekly. So apparently there's no 2 workouts are the same. Very similar to how McDonald's sends out beef to the franchisees, but also not at all similar in the same vein. McDonald's and fitness. The one time they cross over. I did love reading some of the franchisee blogs and the top tips. They had some really strict guidelines to abide by. Franchise rules, like you must abide by these franchise rules, is very important. Also, feel free to inject your own personality into it, which I think there must be a lot of tension with that in general in a lot of franchises around having ownership over what you bought and what you're doing, but also sticking by and making sure that you're stuck into the what the franchise means. I also love that the franchise description is turnkey. Purchase the franchise and bang, you've got everything you need. Your workouts, your equipment, your DJ mixers, and everything you need to run an F45. You just need to have $300,000 in liquid capital and 170 square meters of commercial real estate. Simples. Oh, and also a big love of changing people's lives through fitness.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah.
Vital.
What?
Part of the package.
100%. One more thing that I love, and to be honest, this is actually one of my favorite business models. It's expensive for customers, with the hope that customers will be more sticky, or at least stickier than a regular gym. For instance, I pay about $15 a week for my gym membership or something like that, which varies. But I'm hearing that a F45 membership is about $60 to $65 a week in Australia, so roughly $3 a year. Yeah, it's a decent price difference. However, this is kind of tied into the model, and it does work and has its merits. Because all of a sudden, a customer is justifying going 7 times a week because that membership goes, oh, well, actually, that means that each session only costs me $10, which is quite competitive. If you think about that.
Yeah.
You're more likely to keep coming back, kind of adds into the cult vibe. To be honest, I like it. The best example of this is many people, myself included, purchase online courses. You've ever purchased an online course, like $10, or it's cheap and it's platforms, and you've gotten a few hours in, you've got some interesting tidbits, and you never come back to it. And you just sit there and you kind of feel good that you purchased it. That versus maybe a university course or something a lot more expensive, you're more willing to be involved in that because you've actually put up a lot more investment financially.
Yeah, that's the psychology.
So it's along the lines of the sunk cost fallacy. However, in the same breath, there's actually plenty of anecdotes, both in the media and from people even I know, that the high intensity portion of the high intensity workout causes injuries. So customer retention is kind of hard if your core product is damaging your customer. But that's fun.
Yeah.
One report I read had the average lifespan of an F45 customer at about 18 months. And in fact, every time you type in F45 into Google, one of the top results that comes up is often why I quit F45.
Wow.
Hey, if they quit, it means at one time they were customers. Just maybe not long term.
Yeah.
I can see that.
But that indicates not a very good churn.
18 months. Not too bad. Not great. As long as you
suppose if they're spending $60 a week.
saw customers aside, let's run through the timeline because things are about to get very exciting.
Saw customers.
We left you about 2014 when we're building up around Australia. The first international F45 is in 2015 in New Zealand. In the same year, they celebrate about 250 Oceania franchises. Then over to USA in about 2015, and then 20 sites in the UK by 2017. In 2018, we have studios in Switzerland, in Germany. Also, a program that integrates into colleges, which I think like things like this are a franchise's dream as it's seen as innovating and it's got plenty of upside. And by 2019, we're in Iraq, Mauritius, and F45 is available in roughly 40 countries. Crazy growth. It can do no wrong. And in 2019, F45 also lands a strategic partner in Mark Wahlberg and his investment firm. And his investment runs this partnership and set up more growth and more expansion. So by July of 2021, the fitness giant, you'll notice I've skipped over a few years here. I'll come back. By July of 2021, the fitness giant debuts on the New York Stock Exchange at around 2 billion Australian dollars. It's a decent payday. I'll call it that it was meant to go public the year prior through a thing called a SPAC, special purpose acquisition. Don't ask me more on that. I don't fully understand it.
We'll do a episode just on SPAC.
What's a SPAC? It also tried to IPO in 2020. It was hurdled by legal fights with a competitor called BodyFit. Oh, and also many people will remember 2020. A lot of its franchises were shut down thanks to so and why an IPO may have not been reconsidered. It's probably not great when a lot of your businesses can't actually operate. Also, Rob Dutch has left. Yes, that's right. The founder, the mastermind behind F45 has left. He started a family and he is actually quite reflective in a recent article and a recent interview about his new business venture that it wasn't actually a fairy tale exit. So maybe some unpleasantness. And he was less favorable about the company publicly listing at the time. He has since recognized it's the right thing to do, but from my understanding, reading through the lines there, that's probably where some of the he decided to move on. Another call out is that each article update about their process to listing publicly shows a decent trend line up around how much F45 is. In January 2020, it's worth about 645 million. And then in June 2020, worth about 845 million. So we're going up. And as I mentioned,
even through the lockdowns and stuff, it's
exactly.
Going up.
And people are thinking about potential. To think about the stock market, it's always thinking about the future potential, not what's happening right now. When it dawns, it's worth about that 1.4 billion or the 2 billion Australian, as I mentioned. So even in the light of COVID, it's worth plenty. We're going all right here. Gilchrist, who's still on board at the time, owned about 25%. So pretty decent little payday for him. Mr. Dutch did not have a stake in the company at the time of listing, according to his Instagram. Now, Emily, as we always say, this is a podcast about things that have gone wrong. So you can probably feel a little bit of like, how much did the wheels fall off? As I mentioned at the top, the company went from $17 per stock to about $1, which is disastrous.
Yeah, that's a massive drop.
And to come off that giant trajectory that they were kind of experiencing, and in theory, their mentality might have been, oh, well, once COVID's over, once we're through this, it's just going to be nothing but upside. The opposite has been kind of true. A whole bunch of it, as I mentioned, it came from COVID. So there's probably a decent lag around them in feeling the impact of what happened with COVID. Franchise owners weren't able to pay some of those fees. There's also a fair bit of debt. Lawyers don't love this at all. And so they start to cry misrepresentation, which happens a lot in these kind of IPO stories. There's a lot of similar disaster stories from Uber, from Facebook. They go, hang on, you said the stock was going to be worth tons. I put money in and it's just not happening. Expectation does not meet reality. So to combat this, F45 starts to declare, we're still expanding. With some reports that they're aiming to expand to 23,000 studios. The only problem is that COVID isn't really helping them out at all, or is it helping out most of the fitness industry? Push comes to shove, they battle their way through the COVID period. They do things like they pause those franchise fees. Probably doesn't help with their underlying profits, but they offer online workouts. So an online platform people would be aware of, although much to the frustration of the franchisee owners, because the membership fees for this are going to head office, not back to the franchises who are really, really hurting in this space. And a lot of this happens from the kind of lockdowns. If you think about it, it was actually illegal in Melbourne to have your business open. Stories around people who own these franchises walking away with 17 cents in their bank account. It's not great.
I know other people who own gyms, not F45 gyms, but like other gyms, and they really suffered in lockdown. It's a
rough time. Speaking of rough times, still rough for F45. And in July of 2022, Mr. Gilchrist steps down and 45% of the F45 workforce is laid off. Yeah. The expansion plans are put on hold or at least reconsidered. And what's to blame? And it's a line we keep hearing from many tech companies, other companies who are going through those kind of readjustments. It's the changing macroeconomic environment, aka people don't want our products right now or our service. So spending more money on it is probably not a great idea. As I mentioned, a lot of this comes from those failing franchises. And some of them, there's reports of apparently 100K plus in debt due to COVID. They're also not in love with the idea as they once were. There's probably a few reasons for this that we can consider. Everyone globally is feeling the pinch financially, and a $65 workout, probably the first thing to go if you're on some of the essentials. And it kind of goes from
100%.
It's expensive. And it probably goes from bad to worse. The stock price continues to fall. Earning downgrades continue, and all those expensive celebrity, the influencing invoices, they're coming due. Beckham wants $18 million. Greg Norman wants another $2 million. They're fighting off takeover bids. They've got less than $9 million in the bank and a debt of over $60 million.
Oh my goodness.
The F45 could be swapped out for something else. Failure for those playing at home. The subject wasn't there. Now, I need to take a breath because I want to bring it to March of 2023, which, depending on when you listen to this, may be very close to you. If you're listening to it in 5 years from now, maybe not. But in the words of Mariah Carey, a hero comes along in the form of a plan. And everyone loves plans because everyone goes, well, this is how we get out of this. F45 comes to us with a brand new administrative structure. So they've restructured.
This is like everyone loves feeling like they're in control in a time where everything is out of control.
And you'd be wanting to do that as well. Like they're looking for options.
Yeah.
Mark Wahlberg is now the chief brand officer, which throughout this escapade, he's been doing it anyway. He's been posting his Instagram around how good F45 is and how much you want to be involved. With good reason. He is still heavily invested from my understanding. They brought on a new CEO. So the original leadership team is all but gone, but Ben Coates comes on board and he has experience from GNC, which is the vitamin and supplements giant, running a giant company.
Yeah.
They're excited. They're up and about. They're not focusing on the 91% drop in the stock price. They still need to give a Q4 2022 financial update, which hasn't happened as of the recording of this episode. But you've got to think, it can't be great. So Emily, what do? How do we ensure that this is just the messy middle of a homegrown success story rather than the final act of F45? I'm interested in your opinion. Let's come back after the break.
Should we do it after the break?
All right, Emily, welcome back. F45.
Yay. F45.
It's a story.
What a journey.
It really is. I think there's so many key players and it's got the standard ingredients of everything that we're that we're used to in some of these stories, but also something quite different. And I
Yeah.
think because it's playing out right now, we had the opportunity to intervene. So Mark Wahlberg, if you're listening, I don't have to say he's not listening. But
Yeah, that's true.
how do we fix this?
So, like, I don't know. I mean, how do we fix this is a really enormous question, because it's like you can see the writings on the wall. You've got a high churn rate in terms of, well, a medium churn rate in that you lose customers. And I don't think it's very rare that you might rejoin a gym really quickly after you've sort of dropped it, because
Once you've been done dirty by a gym, you're probably going on. And I think there's so many transitions of people who do something like a gym and then go to something a little bit, I'm going to say softer.
Yeah.
And I mean softer on the body, but something like
Yeah.
reformer,
Yeah.
which I think I see a transition from those who love that F45 environment and go to something.
And if people are getting injured, then they're hitting up their yoga and their Pilates. There's definitely some issues. I think the first thing that I would suggest that they do is, you know how you were talking about when the franchisees got their little packet and it was like, here's your booklet, this are the exercises, these are the things. And also you must have a attitude to want to help people.
Which I think, spending time, a lot of their materials, like their blogs and everything, it does seem supportive. Although I just one of the first franchise kind of environments that we've done on this podcast. And so a little bit educated for me in this space. So I'm unsure how much it's supportive compared to something else, franchises.
Maybe since Rob Dutch left, and maybe he was against sort of the IPO in a way, because he felt like the mission that he'd set out to mission might be getting lost with the escalation of the business. And that's quite a common thing to happen. Like, you're growing, it's exciting, there's buzz in the business community around it, you're going public, so there's like shareholders, and I'm not sure what might be happening with the franchise owners, but pre-IPO, they would have been the biggest collaborators for like the head office. So they would be just really concerned with what the franchise owners needed, what they're doing. They were like the major people that they needed to please. And then as soon as the IPO comes out, all of a sudden they have shareholders and public investors that they need to answer to on the other side.
Which is a common story. As soon as you just completely change your business model from working internally to being like raw and just open to public scrutiny, as should be in terms of being on the stock exchange.
I think I would start with understanding what F45's like overarching goal is, what they want to do, have that vision and understand what that means. And then find a way to sell that to your shareholders and your franchise owners. Try to get everyone on the same page so that you're not constantly fighting against. Because I imagine franchise owners aren't feeling very encouraged.
Often you find a news.com article about a very happy F45 franchise owner right now.
That's interesting in itself. And if the franchise owners are losing motivation, then you're sort of losing the people who are on the ground with your customers. And so then you're going to lose your customers. And it's sort of like this trickle-on effect. So I think that like getting back to F45 as a community and the franchise owners as the people who are bringing you in business is probably a really good place to start. That's the only way you're going to keep customers. And if they're losing customers, do you know why the share prices drop so much? Just because shareholder expectation is dwindling, or if they lost like
earnings
heaps
being the main
of
reason.
earnings. So then you can only assume that they're losing subscribers.
And franchise owners aren't able to pay the franchise fees, which I imagine a lot of the profit comes from. And I imagine they've taken out a lot of debt to be able to afford the expansion. And there's been some offers around line of credits. So they could subsidize that upfront cash, which has been on and off again, on and off again. And so I think there's just less money in the bank. And so the company's worth less and the potential is starting to dwindle.
It's such a flooded market, this fitness industry. Everyone's in it. Like, I'm bombarded all the time on my social medias and my things and that. They're like, this is the latest trend. This didn't work for you. Try this. It's the new thing and it's guaranteed to work for you. You just hear it all the time. And it's like, they become sort of fads. So like F45 is at the risk of them being a fad that is going to dwindle. So what they need to do is figure out what is it that we're offering people that is answering a need that's not going to go away, and how do we address that, and how do we turn around that churn rate to people investing those prices that they have, $60 a month. If you're all of a sudden hitting a really busy period of your life and you cannot go to the gym, you are going to opt for like an app at home, or like I pay for a health and fitness app that costs me $40 a year. Of course, it's not as in-depth as
100%.
F45 or whatever. When I'm busy, I've got this little app that I can go to. I don't know whether F45 wants to look at tiering prices. I'm sure you can be like, okay, I'm probably likely going to attend the gym 2 times a week. And so for the next month, I'm going to commit to 2 times a week, or you pay like a premium on like that extra class. Or you can do like, I'm going to commit to 4 classes a week, or whatever it looks like.
Which is probably interesting where the cult community vibe probably works not in their favor, because it's probably not approachable for transient fitness hoppers. So people who just want to jump in and do a quick workout. Then
it is hard though, because you sort of want them to keep their point of difference, which is that sort of like community culty vibe. So how can we do sort of like levels of price modeling without losing what it is that we want to create, which is a community of fitness and encouragement?
Going back to head office so they can make it more available. Do you reckon they've done enough? This is probably the thing I was thinking of. Do you reckon they've done enough to protect their franchise owners? So I think for expansion, and to going back to what you said around being a fad, because they're being a fad, there's just so many of them popping up everywhere. And there's also so many gyms popping up. And so all of a sudden a gym might pop up, a competing franchise that's a lot cheaper, that particularly in this market people are actually wanting. I wonder how much head office does research into who they're selling to. I have to be like, well, listen, it's probably not wise to start an F45 because there's one down the road. And as I mentioned, there's 5 within 5 kilometers of me. How much F45 does one suburb need?
That's really interesting. And you could probably get some really bitter franchise owners when they see that there's a competing gym opening up 2 streets down. They'd probably want to be more tactical in where they put their locations.
I wonder if there's also opportunity for them to own like flagship or start flagship F45, like mothership, in which it also becomes a training facility, and you can start to have more satellite offerings off that, and you can also start different franchising opportunities.
There might be an argument for them to reconsider the franchising business model in itself. Like if it's not working and you've moved to an IPO and a publicly listed business, there may be an argument to centralizing everything at this point. But that's very complicated, because that will really complete overhaul. I would say that you would want to look at that very carefully, but based on what you're trying to achieve and what the needs of your shareholders and your community are, because that is where you're going to find the answer. And if the answer is we have to do a complete overhaul and change the business model in order to stay relevant, then that's the answer.
Franchises like McDonald's and all the rest that work, and it's effectively, you can go to McDonald's any country and you can buy the same thing.
If you get McDonald's, you're on the run, like you're on the fly, and you could be anywhere in Melbourne. Like you don't go to the same McDonald's all the time, whereas you're more than likely to go to the same gym all the time.
You might have hit the nail on the head, or at least a nail. I think quite bespoke in terms of F45 spending a lot of time there.
Yeah.
Maybe a franchise works quite well for this. The customer experience isn't just grab and go. It isn't just, I'm thinking about so many franchises where it is food-based. It's grab and go. You're not spending a lot of time there and a lot of effort there, and you don't need to be nurtured. And so it's probably hard to maintain that key differentiator around building a community, particularly when you're outsourcing building a community.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I actually think there needs to be a lot more research done in terms of like I'd love to have a look at the data that F45 have about the things that are working and the things that aren't working, because those are the things that they need to understand how they're connecting with their community in order to determine what to do now.
I just love the image of Mark Wahlberg, the giant Hulk of a man, just poring over books and pie charts and research papers and Excel spreadsheets. It's a lovely image.
Well, thanks for listening to this episode, and we hope you successfully avoided joining yet another type of cult. If you want to learn more for your business, head over to our website, thebigconsultingagency.com, and sign up to the mailing list to hear news about workshops and stay up to date with new episodes. Don't forget to also follow us and rate us on your podcast app.
Thanks, guys. Do we need a trigger warning for all these cult episodes?